Yeah. Surprise, a little different than you used to. Yeah. Dropping these bars on YouTube, knowledge I introduce you. Yeah. We chasing this money like it's the prize, it's the voodoo. Fugazi, fugazi, it's just a lie we buying into. We need some cars on deck. Get the rollies, get the moe, all the Mars on deck.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this live show. We're going to talk about finances. We're going to answer some questions where you're going to ask some questions. That is the plan. And then you will basically get a response from me in a bid to kind of help you make some decisions or just clarify a few things, basically. Actually, you know what? I do need these headphones because I want to test a little something out. Can you please tell me by just a few vote of maybe just a few comments in the chat? I've experimented a little bit. I'm trying to introduce some extra bits and pieces into the stream. So, did you hear a gong just a second ago? Please do let me know if you heard a gong. There it is, right there. Again, let me know whether you heard that, and also let me know whether you heard. Okay. It's saying you didn't hear one. Okay, cool. That's fine. That's one for me to basically tweak into the stream. But anyway, right. So this is the plan. We're going to answer some questions from you guys and see if we can get you onto the road of maybe getting some clarity around some finances and so on and so forth. So we have an hour effectively. So we'll go up to 8 o'clock. So let us know what you think. Just so you know, tomorrow on the podcast, I'm delving back into the investment kind of like subject matter, purely because I don't know whether you guys are paying attention at the moment. There's a lot of stuff going on in the geopolitical space, which will ultimately have an impact on the markets, investments and stuff. And I'm asking tomorrow what the future of investing is all about. And what does it look like? There's so much stuff going on right now, and you'll hear about it in the episode, which will be live on this channel at 12 p.m. tomorrow. So maybe come back and watch it then. But I think that we're in a very interesting space right now where we will start to see the investment landscape start to shift around where money is deployed and how money is deployed. And I think over the next 5 to 10 years, the investment landscape is going to be completely different. And it's going to look completely different in terms of where money's put. Currently, the US still runs the roost. I don't think that's going to be a thing in the next 5 to 10 years. There's going to be a significant change, I believe. And so there's a lot of stuff that I analyzed for the podcast episode tomorrow morning without saying too much. But it's going to be really, really interesting. But please just let us know what your thoughts are. All right, Jedemel, welcome, my friend. Welcome. Excellent. Good man. I'm glad that you've got the copies of the book, mate. And again, thank you for asking for a couple of them to be signed and stuff. I do appreciate you. And again, if anyone wants signed copies of my book is there in the corner right here. You can scan the QR code to basically purchase it. But if you want signed copies, you need to message me on Instagram. I've got some in the house here I can send out to you. But mate, thank you so much. I appreciate you. People are saying no gongs, no applause. That's cool. No worries. Knowledge Seeker, how you doing, my friend? Welcome. You're definitely that champion mentioned, page 19. Good one, mate. I like it. All right. Okay, cool. So there must be questions. So let's get your questions in the comments. As always, what I try and do is I don't obviously give you financial advice. I mean, I can't tell you exactly what to do when it comes to investments, mortgages, that kind of stuff, but I can give you an answer based on my understanding, based on my experience, and give you things to basically consider, to think about, to go research. And sometimes within those answers will basically you'll have enough to be able to make a choice of your own, essentially. But I can't give specific investment advice or mortgage advice specifically on those subjects. If you're asking something that is more generally about finance, then yes, I can give you a direct answer, so on and so forth, just to let you know. So here's a comment here. Sorry if this is obvious, but can you share what YouTube vids you have / recommend for beginners to invest in? What to sign? I want to sign up to Hargreaves, but not until I know the basics. There is an entire playlist on the channel which is dedicated to that. So all of the basics around investing. Let me get onto my channel and see if I can just share my screen quickly, and I can direct you a little bit. Where do I go? Where do I go? Where do I go? I've got so many videos. I've got like 600 videos on this channel right now. So I appreciate it can be really, really hard getting to the bottom of what playlists you need to have a look at. But let me just pull this up very quickly. 1 second. Which tab is this? It's this one. Okay, cool. So the one you probably want is, let me see if I can change this. Yeah, so the playlist you probably want is this one, Investing for Beginners. That one has how many? 131 videos in it, basically, but it will cover a lot of the basics for you. I think there are some videos on Hargreaves Lansdowne in this one as well. Let me just go into this really quickly. See if actually no, that doesn't take me to. Let's look at the video list. There's a lot in here, mate. Okay, so there's a lot in there. We talk about ISAs with that. We've got lifetime ISAs, pensions in here. There's quite a few videos on the investing topic specifically. Would I pick out one or two of these for you to definitely go and watch? There's a few here, mate. I mean, I think this one will be a good one for you to watch. Novice investors avoid these mistakes. That will be a really, really good one for you to watch potentially. Let's see if there's any others that I would kind of put out there for you. UK ISA rules. If you're looking to use ISAs and you're looking to do that within Hargreaves Lansdowne, I'll definitely recommend that one for you as well. I've got a Vanguard series here. So I've got Vanguard index funds. That gives you a really good breakdown on them within there. So there's quite a few. I would suggest go and have a look at that playlist. I also do have a course for beginner investors. It's not currently on my website, but if you go to one of those old videos, there will be a link to it down there that you can get into. On the old link, actually, this is interesting because I've got so many videos now. It's really, really difficult to it's really, really difficult to keep track of all of my links and stuff. Some of them don't work now because obviously I do have literally 600 or so videos now on the channel. And I'm just thinking, do I actually have my course in here? My course is there, but I don't know that this link actually works anymore. Let me just have a look. 1 second. Let me just test this out. No, I don't think that works. That definitely doesn't work. Oh, no, it does. It does. It takes you to my website, but it's not currently on my website. But go and have a look at those videos first, is what I would suggest. That will give you enough information to begin. And there are some videos on Hargreaves Lansdowne specifically if you're looking to use them, mate. So that's what I'll suggest for the time being. Right. Okay. If you want to steam up engagement, you can run live polls in the chat. Yeah, I've not had a chance to set the polls today because I've been literally working all day. And yeah, you can't put polls in, from my understanding, whilst you're actually live. And because this is a Q&A, I'm relying on you guys to basically put your questions into the chat. And then we can kind of build out from there. So let me know what you think. Cheers, Vanette. Thanks for that. It was more just overwhelming as you have a lot of smashing content. Yeah, there is a lot there, mate. There is a lot there. I mean, I've been doing this now. It's 2020, so this is 3 years now. So, and I've posted a lot kind of try and give a lot of value and stuff like that as well. So you will find content in there that will be really, really useful. But yeah, you'll have that in there as well. So cool. Let's have a look through there. All right. Right. Let me just catch up with myself here. 1 second, guys. Okay. Yeah. So look, there are no questions coming through at the moment. So, and I don't have a monologue for you at all in any way, shape, or form this evening. So, I think if there are not, depending on the volume of questions that come in, I have an hour pretty much. That's all I have this evening because I've got to go do something a bit later on, prepping for the week next week. And I know that I've done a lot of these as well, which I'm always very, very kind of mindful of. And this is very much, I used to do them week after week. I think pretty much through 2021, we did these every single week. I kind of stopped for a bit of time, but obviously because interest rates and mortgages and rent and the cost of living, I thought I'd bring this back for a period of time as well. So we're depending on demand. This is very much dependent on demand and how much interaction we get, how many questions we basically get will dictate how long we actually carry these on for. Because I think we're doing the lives during the week as well, which I enjoy, by the way. I think that I try to listen to what you guys essentially want, and it's hard sometimes because you try and level that out with, okay, so what are the channel analytics saying? What is good for channel growth, and trying to pick out, I guess, your weapon of choice. Really, it can be really, really hard sometimes. I do lives now because I enjoy them a little bit more. There's a lot more interaction. I can get to know you guys a little bit more. We can have a conversation via the chat. Whereas sometimes when I make a actual video, it is very much I've got to prep it, film it, I've got to edit it, and then I've got to think about all the ancillary stuff around thumbnails and titles and all this kind of stuff. And with everything else that I'm doing during the day, it's a little bit of a challenge. Although I do kind of miss the process of it, but I don't miss it enough to the point where I'd give up live stream. So at the moment, it's kind of like, okay, how do I find the balance between doing some live streams where I can get more interaction with you guys and actually have conversations with you guys and continue to do things that I'm enjoying, and also from a channel growth point of view as well, always being mindful that what I've noticed in my analytics looking at it is a lot of you who are on this live right now you followed the channel for a period of time, so it's always returning people, not necessarily new people joining in any way, shape, or form, and that's okay. But if I were to look at it from a YouTube algorithm point of view and channel sustainability point of view, is actually not a good thing at all, and that's definitely something that I need to address, which kind of then brings back the case and the argument for actual recorded videos that are uploaded. It's certainly better for monetization for sure, because when I do live streams like this, an hour long, it takes 12-14 hours for YouTube to allow monetization onto the video. So that's where you get most of your views. So it makes sense from that point. But we'll see. It's all about trying to make sure that if you guys like it, we continue to do it. How can we efficiently use salary sacrifice for pension and car financing? It really depends on what you've got available. The thing you've got to remember with salary sacrifice is, it will help you reduce your tax because obviously, you're sacrificing your salary before the tax is actually taken out, so you're going to get that win there. But you also need to bear in mind that obviously the take-home pay element, there's a reduction in that. Also, if you're looking at company cars within a scheme in the company, you also need to think about benefit in kind. So making sure that you're looking at all of the elements around that. I've been stung with benefit in kind a number of times, particularly with one company. I thought I had paid pretty much all of the tax, only to get a tax bill through, I think it was like 2 years later, saying that I owed money on on a former car that I had with work under benefit in kind. So I think it's really important to kind of know where you're at, how much are you going to sacrifice, what impact is it going to have in terms of, yes, saving you tax, but also your take-home pay. That if you've got to pay benefit in kind under your car finance scheme, if it's via a work scheme, you need to know what those numbers actually look like. But there was someone on the live, I think it was earlier this week, who was saying that they're looking at salary sacrifice because effectively brings them down below the threshold so that they don't lose things like child benefit, which is a great way of looking at things as well, because I just think you need to play the system as efficiently and use the rules to your advantage. AB saying, afternoon, Peter. Are there any apps or ways you use to track tax for being self-employed? For example, Coconut. I don't use any at all. I've got an accountant, so my accountant does pretty much everything for me. I've never heard of Coconut. I've not used Coconut at all. But if that is something that you guys would benefit from in terms of the kind of accounts to track tax for self-employed or business owners, I can definitely have a look into that. It's not something I've done on the channel before, and I haven't done it because I'm not an accountant, and I don't like to veer into those kind of topics because it's not really my wheelhouse. But I'm going to write down here apps to track tax. But personally, I have an accountant that does everything for me, which means I've got to pay him money, but it just takes the hassle of me having to make sure that everything's done. I mean, I'll tell you what I do anyway, because I'm VAT registered. I will always make sure that I've got a VAT pot or corporation tax pot separate to my business account. And I think that's really, really important because I know too many people who, one of my friends, for example, he runs his own business, but he never really plans ahead for corporation tax. And I do. So I plan ahead for VAT. I plan ahead for corporation tax. I just want to make sure that within my cash flow, I always make sure 20% goes into a separate account for VAT. And then I'm always keeping an eye on, okay, what am I use a spreadsheet effectively. So I've got an idea of what my turnover is. I've got an idea of what my expenses are. I have an idea of what my profits are. And then I can kind of keep tabs on what my potential corporation tax might be. So I do that proactively on my own. And I would encourage anyone, if you are running your own business, to try and be proactive in that same vein, because having to find your corporation tax 2 or 3 months before it's due, it's just, it means that you'll put yourself under undue pressure and stress, and you don't want that. Really, you don't. So I'm very proactive across my business and my personal finances, and this is another thing as well. You know, your business finances and your personal finance, the principles are pretty much exactly the same, really, to be fair. So generally speaking, if you're okay on the personal finance type area, you should be able to, you know, move some and translate some of those principles into the business. But there are no apps. I do it all proactively, and just track what's coming in, what's going out, and generally have different accounts for them. London reseller, is it worth stocks investing if you're in your 50s? Is it worth investing if you're in your 50s? Yes, I would say so. It depends what, I mean, I guess at that point, you're probably looking more towards generating income potentially. And so your strategy may be very, very different. Your strategy may be that because you're in your 50s, you may have one eye potentially on the future, generating an income of some kind. So you may decide that the strategy that best works for you in that instance will be to perhaps look at things like dividend stocks, those kind of things, and building a portfolio around that. So it's income focused specifically. But I would say it's definitely worth it. The question will be, how much are you going to be looking to put in over what period of time, and just making sure that you get the risk element to it right. And if you're, technically speaking, if you're buying dividend stocks, your risk is will be lower than if you went for, you know, growth stocks or things like that, because they're way more stable as dividend companies. But I would say it's definitely worthwhile, yeah, for sure. But have some clarity on what you're doing it for. I'm at 40%. I'm in the 40% tax bracket. Yeah, me and you both, mate. Yeah. I don't look at pay slips. I just don't. And once I take dividends and stuff like that as well, it's very, very easy to start getting over and above that tax bracket as well. But that's where, you know, your accountant is really, really important, just in terms of the shape of your income from your company if you're self-employed. And that's probably one of the big benefits of being self-employed and running your own business. you do have the choice of determining how you want to take the income yourself. But take tax advice for it. You want to make sure you're doing everything above board and you're not doing things that you shouldn't be doing. I have a few friends in the UK, but I find your financial products to be very interesting in comparison to the US products. The same principles apply, and I think differently after they see how they work. Yeah, like I've already said this before, mate. Like in the States, like the way your insurance products work 401ks, Roth IRAs, they're very, very interesting. They are very, very different. I wish there were certain elements around how your insurance products work that we could use here in the UK, but we just can't. But yeah, the financial systems, the principles for both of our financial systems are relatively the same. They're fundamentally the same. Just the nuances in the products and how they function are very, very different. Michelle, hi Pete. I have my house deposit saved. I'm looking to get my mortgage in principle soon. Well done. Do you think it would be best to wait a bit longer to see if those rates come down further? Thanks in advance. You can for sure wait to see if the rates come down. I would still say that you should go ahead and get your agreement in principle anyway, because you're going to take some time to find a property, complete on the mortgage. If you get an agreement in principle now, you'll get a rate now. If those rates change later on, you still potentially have the ability to be able to get a lower rate later on, right? Whereas if things don't necessarily go to plan now and rates do go up, will they go up? Unless something goes wrong with all the forecasts that we've been looking at on this channel for the past 6 months. I mean, certainly over the last 2 weeks since the Bank of England base rate went from 5 to 5.25, the general consensus is that mortgage rates are starting to come down a little bit. We hope that continues. So on that vein, it would be worthwhile waiting. But I think you should still get an agreement in principle kind of now, but ask the question. Say, look, I want to get an agreement in principle so I can go out and hunt, because it's only an agreement in principle. I want to go out and hunt and see what's out there. If rates come down, what does that look like in terms of my application? Am I locked here, or will I be able to get access to a lower rate? Have that conversation with your mortgage provider and see what they say. GT Playboy, what's going on? Thank you very much for the reminder on this. Please do smash the like button, people, if you do get value from this. We've got 51 people on here at the minute, 19 likes. I'm sure we can get that up to like 30, surely. Laura, how you doing? Sometimes just saying, if looking to be a first-time buyer at 450,000 and have a 10% deposit, is it smarter to aim for 15 to 20%, even if that means saving for another 9 months? Yes, I mean, it really depends on what your affordability is, mate. I mean, what are you trying to achieve with that? Obviously, a higher deposit will basically mean that you will get a better rate in terms of the actual mortgage offering, right? Whereas if you go with a 10%, I mean, let's not forget, we're talking large sums of money here. You're talking from going from 45k to 90k deposit. That's a lot of hard work. It sounds like you've got the income to be able to do that. You'll get a better rate for sure at 20% deposit versus 10% deposit. So is that affordability? What does that work out in terms of the actual monthly repayment numbers? And then it's all just about making sure that you get the nuance right in terms of whether you're going for a 2-year fixed rate, 5-year fixed rate, or whether you would even go longer than that. But yeah, I mean, if you could go and get a 20% deposit, you would definitely get a better mortgage rate for sure. Your loan to value is going to be lower, so it makes sense on that front. It is quite a difficult one, though, isn't it? Because we just don't know what's going to happen moving forward. I mean, over the next 2-3 years, the consensus is that the Bank of England base rate will come back down, but I just don't see it coming down at the rate that it went up, and that's really where the trouble comes, right? Because it's very, very hard for us to plan. You know, if you look back over the interest rate curve, and we've done this a number of times on the channel, if you look back over the interest rate curves from back when it was in the 80s and the 90s, they were up here. So it was only natural that you would see interest rates come down. That's very, very different now because we are on the upward trend. Are we going to really see them come back down as we would have expected them to before? I don't really know. And there are so many other things going on at the moment as well that potentially means that there could be there could be a lot of issues moving forward. I don't want to give away a lot of stuff that I'm going to talk about on the podcast tomorrow morning, but you know, we're talking about inflation and how energy prices have influenced inflation and that cost of importing, energy, and as just one factor that contributed to inflation. I honestly think that saga is not yet over. It's not over yet. If you look at what's happening geopolitically at the moment across the globe, it's not over. The Nord Stream pipeline is basically gone, right? So the alternative was they were going to build a liquid natural gas pipeline from Nigeria through Niger, Algeria to the top of Africa, pipe it into Africa, into Europe. Sorry, the US and Chevron have piled 13 billion quid into this project, right? And the idea behind that is an alternative energy supply. What's going on out there right now puts all of that in jeopardy, essentially, with Niger saying, actually, you know what? No, it's not going through our land without any benefit to our populace, and rightly so. And I think that if that doesn't get worked out, which I say get worked out, and the implication of what that means isn't even worth thinking about, and I don't want to think about it, but there are puppets in play and there are powers influencing things at this point in time. If a conflict ensues, I think that we could see another bat of inflation driven by energy prices yet again, unless someone strikes a deal with, I don't know, Russia or Saudi Arabia or someone. And what Russia's doing as well at the moment, what China are doing at the moment, is they're going about their business and they're not messing about. And people can say what they want and believe what they want, but I look at it from what's going on right now, from what I'm reading and what I'm seeing, there are potential issues for us to deal with. And part of me feels as though we've not seen the end to this inflation saga. This is not the end at all. I think that there are still going to be potential pitfalls and issues that we need to deal with. And are we prepared? There is a seismic shift going on right now. And what we're used to, what we've become accustomed to, is no longer going to be the norm. It just isn't. And that's my big concern at this point in time. What's going on? Because it's going to be really, really interesting to see. Just scanning the comments. Bear me 1 second. Listen, don't get me started, man. Do not get me started. Is there a chance of Arsenal to win the league with a rate decrease in the next 12 months? Listen, the starts of the Premier League has been very, very interesting. I mean, Newcastle 5-1. I mean, Jesus Christ, first game of the season. Then you got City, Haaland scores with his first kick. I mean, geez, dude, go sit down. Just take a break or something, right? It's going to be really, really interesting to see what's going to happen this season. You would think that City would kind of drop off because they've had so many players leave, but you can never discount the Pep factor, right? You just can't. So when you look at the other teams as well, I think Newcastle do look strong because obviously they've started off strong. They've started off strong, so maybe they continue the same. But it feels like they've picked up where they left off. Then you got Liverpool. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with Liverpool, but I'm sure they're going to be there or thereabouts. You've got Chelsea. I mean, Tottenham's lost Harry Kane, so God knows where they're going to end up. Then you've got my beloved team, United. Let's just put it this way: I'm hopeful. We've had a pretty good transfer window, I think. Big changes to the way we're going to play this season. I'm not hopeful of winning the title this year though, because I think you need to Ten Hag needs time to develop that style of play, get it really bedded in, and I think maybe we do need. I'm surprised we didn't go for Harry Kane last minute, just try and hijack that move, but who knows? But will Arsenal win the title? I hope not. we will see a rate decrease in the next 12 months. Yes, I hope so. So part yes, part no, mate. Isn't it better to reinvest payments until retirement and then withdraw dividends? Yes, typically speaking, because your dividends are kind of like they're like an added bonus, right? And if you, because with dividends, and this is the great thing about dividend paying companies. So, dividend paying companies pay dividends from profits, which means that in order for the company to pay dividends in the first place, it has to be a profitable business. So, when a business is profitable, typically share price goes up. Now, when you're also paying dividends, that also attracts more people, that pushes the share price up. But the dividends payment in its own is like a cherry on top of the cake. So, when you're getting the share price appreciation, and then you're getting your dividend payments on top, and you're reinvesting your dividends, you're supercharging that compounding effect, which is why dividend stocks are so attractive, because you're supercharging the compound effect. The only issue with dividends is that there are lots of very, very good companies that have performed extremely well over the past decade or so that don't pay dividends. So if you only have that lens of, I'm going to look at dividend stocks exclusively, you potentially miss out on companies that have done very, very well, that could have been a real good growth engine for your portfolio. But that's the risk that you take. But again, it is all about what your investment profile is, your risk, and what you want to achieve and why. And then it's all about making that calculated kind of decision, if you will. Oh, thanks for this, Laura. Thank you very, very much. All right, guys. Now, I'm just waiting for your questions to come through. I'm waiting for your questions to come through. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to answer some questions. So if you do have them, and by the way, no such thing as a stupid question. If you do have questions, by all means, feel free to pop them in here. I'm just going to scan back up again. 1 second. No, we have done that one. There is one that's come through on. Here we go. It's come through just now. Hi, Kashi. Hey, Pete. Amazing content as always. If I plan to permanently leave the UK for Australia in the next 10 years, would I still be able to operate my cash stocks and shares ISA while away? I mean, you can't pay into an ISA or anything like that when you move. You can't continue to contribute, but you can keep the account open. That's fine. But you can't pay more money into it, essentially, because your tax-free status is dependent on you being resident here in the UK. So if you're leaving, you have to let HMRC know that I'm leaving to go here. Have people done it where they don't tell HMRC? I'm sure they have. I don't know what the consequences would be. I don't know if the HMRC would actually do anything if you did move and you didn't tell them. I think they'll find out eventually, because all of the data they pull will indicate that you're no longer in the country. So they'll find out. But the general thing to do is, you let HMRC know you can't continue to pay into the ISAs, but you can keep the investment account open. That's completely fine. But generally speaking, you can't continue to contribute into them. All right, just scanning. Question, and I wish I could do a poll whilst live. Actually, you know what? Can I do this whilst I'm live? 1 second. I have a question for you guys, actually. How can I do this? Let me ask you this, because I'll be interested to know. Someone's already mentioned, tax for business owners, that kind of stuff. But what kind of other topics would you like to see on the channel? Just let me know. What I will do is I will take some notes here. So that's in the chat literally right now. Let me know, because I would love to know. What kind of other topics would you like to see? Because obviously what we've been doing, we've been talking a lot about mortgages, the interest rate environment, inflation, talking a little bit about the economy. We've spoken a lot about investing here on this channel. But what other things would you like to hear? I've covered a lot around, just basic money management, personal finances, that kind of stuff. I think because that goes hand in hand. But what other kind of topics would you want to have me cover? Be interested to know. Gordon's just asking here. I'm in my 50s and still investing into an ISA pension and general investment account using passive funds and ETFs. That's good because you're going to be looking to build, obviously, towards retirement, I would imagine, Gordon. So, where are you investing though? Who are you using? Are you using Hargreaves? Are you using Vanguard? Are you using, AJ Bell? Who are you using currently? Let me know. It's interesting, really, because when we had this conversation about ISAs and pensions, like back end of last week, I think it was Friday or so. I still think people feel as though they've got to choose one or the other. Like you've got to either have a pension, you got to have an ISA. In like you can have different wrappers for different things, and an investment comes in different wrappers. So your pension is an investment wrapper, your ISA is an investment wrapper, your general investment account is an investment wrapper. It's all about functionality with your tax allowances also in mind as well, so that you're as efficient as possible. So you start using one wrapper, you fill that up, you filter down to the next tax efficient wrapper, and then whatever you might have in things, something like a general investment account, is used to siphon or at least pass money through the wrappers in the following tax year. That's generally the idea when you look at it from a financial planning point of view. According to saying here, using Vanguard, Invest Engine, and Fidelity Legacy, very, very good. I mean, Vanguard and Invest Engine are probably two of the, certainly Vanguard's been around for a very long time. Invest Engine, you can get the S&P 500 and some of the funds, ETFs in Vanguard on Invest Engine way, way cheaper. I may have some things coming up with Invest Engine fairly shortly. We're just in conversation at the moment because they've got some really good things going on. But yeah, they're really good. And Fidelity as well, very, very good. Peter here is just saying, hi Pete, if my parents gift me money and I put some into a house deposit, if they pass away in 7 years, will I have to sell it? Will I have to sell if I can't afford to pay the tax on the gifted money? You won't have to. Well, you don't have to sell it, mate. I mean, they can't force you to sell it, but you would need to make sure that, I mean, really, I don't know whether your parents have an advisor or not, but this is the kind of stuff that you would try and plan for ahead of time. You have a contingency. So you won't be forced to sell the property, but you would need to pay the tax bill effectively. Now, I don't know whether or not your parents have something like a life insurance policy, because this is the thing, right? So a lot of people cancel their life insurance policy as they get older, because as you get older, sometimes you're paying quite a bit for it on a monthly basis, particularly if you took it out late. But if your parents have something like a life insurance policy, that potentially, if it's made out to you as the beneficiary, can be used to pay the tax potentially, right? So you do kind of need to think about that ahead of time, and you are currently. But what I would say is you need to have a contingency for sure, because if they do pass within 7 years, depending on how much they gift you, you could be looking at a pretty decent tax bill when you consider in the taper rate of the 7-year runoff effectively. So yeah. Kevin, what's going on? How you doing? Gordon saying I also Klopp. You know what? Klopp at Liverpool, it's going to be really fascinating to see what happens this season. I just want somebody else to win it apart from fucking Man City, and preferably not Liverpool either. I was kind of rooting for Arsenal last year because it would have just been nice to have somebody else win it. And because the team played so well, it's just so gutting when you get expectant of a team winning something and then they don't in the fashion that they did. And it's just because like City are just the Rolls Royce. The team they've got so much depth in their squad that they're just a machine. And Arsenal just fell a little bit short. I think the Declan Rice signing is huge. I think potentially that really helps to push the team a little bit further on Arsenal's side. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I don't know. I'm surprised that Liverpool actually sold Henderson. I'm really surprised they sold Henderson. But I'm telling you, I posted on Instagram the other week. Like, I'm convinced the world has gone mad. They had like a microscopic Louis Vuitton handbag. Like, this thing was so small. There was a picture of it on a thumb. It was minuscule. You'd think it was a tick. Went for something like $600,000. You combine that with the transfer market and the fact that what was Henderson offered, like triple his wages and something like £400,000 a week. Like, the world has gone absolutely mad. It's crazy. But again, I talk about this in the podcast tomorrow. There is a lot of money in places like Saudi and obviously the UAE and all that kind of stuff. And you need to think about how the global structure is going to look like in 5 to 10 years. It's going to be very, very different to what we know right now. And it will be interesting to see when we get there. But I'm excited, and I'm also a little bit worried about what that basically means, because, man, Europe, the Western world, we're in decline, mate. And like, the growth is happening elsewhere. It is. It's happening elsewhere. And the adjustment that we're going to have to make is going to be extremely uncomfortable. Extremely uncomfortable. And anyway, that's a bit of a tangent from I Love Klopp. Let's have a look. Where were we? Where were we? Answer this question right here. So I'm testing some merch right now. So this hat, my sat, is merch. It's actually an abbreviation for one of the sayings that we have here on the channel, or at least one of my slogans on the channel. Can anyone guess? Actually, can anyone guess what my sat means? I say it all the time. I say it on the channel. I say it on the podcast. I say it on Instagram as well. So what do you think MySat stands for? And once I've finalized all of the designs in terms of quality, what I might do, actually, I don't want to give the answer here right now, because I will be doing giveaways once I've landed on the final bits and pieces that I want. But what do you think MySat actually means? Let me know in the chat. I'm just going to end this Q&A right here. See what you guys basically said. That's what you put in. Yeah. Good man. All right. So you guys do pay attention. I'm really, really surprised. Someone's got it right. Where are you? Wait. I don't know if I want to reveal, but hey, two of you got it right. Very, very good. Very, 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 very good. That's essentially what it means. Money is a tool. So, and yeah, I'm playing around with this at the moment, but like I said, when it's available, I might do some giveaways on this. You guys do pay attention. I'm impressed. Well done. Well done. It's a shame my applause button isn't actually working on here. You would have got a round of applause and a gong. Let me just go back up because there's some other comments and questions in here. Where are we? Right. So this is a good question here. If it shows. Can pension portfolios be transferred to children after dead of father or mother, or will it be taxed to children as income? You can pass on your pension over to beneficiaries like your kids. What you will need to do is make sure that you have filled in the beneficiary forms. So basically, you will have a form that you fill in. They'll ask you, who do you want your beneficiaries to be? You can add as many people as you want, and then you can also specify how much you want it to be split by. So if you have 2 kids, you want it to be 50-50, you can do that. If you've got 3 people, you'd be like, okay, I want to leave 50% to my wife and 25% each to the kids. You can do that as well. So you can pass it on to children as well. And they have a choice of how they actually decide to take it. They can take it as income, which means it will be taxed as income as well. But you can also take it as a lump sum as well, and there'll be tax implications for that too. No, I don't think they would, Pete. As far as I'm aware, they wouldn't. Definitely not. Did I enjoy it when Leicester City won? Yes. I didn't put any money on it, and I should have done. But mate, that was an amazing season. That was an amazing season. See, be interested to see what happens with the Saudi league moving forward. I mean, they've got stupid money. to spend, and what they've done is a huge investment. And the first domino really was Ronaldo. But if you think about the quality of players that have left to go there, this transfer window, huge, and they've been really audacious, really like brave about the approaches. And I think it will overtake, you know, leagues like the era of Divisi and other leagues, lesser leagues like that. I think La Liga and the Premier League will probably be okay. Maybe the Bundesliga, but they're definitely going to establish themselves as a power league for sure. Lois is saying here, I open a 1-year fixed rate with Virgin Cash ISA, and it has matured. Do I still get interest after maturity? No, it depends what it matures into. So if you had it in a fixed rate ISA, that's in a wrapper, right? When it matures, the fixed rate basically comes away, and it will mature into maybe an instant access cash account. So yes, you'll still get interest in that account, but you should do a little bit of work to see whether there's an alternative one that you can flip it into, preferably. Peter Sen, if you had £1,000, how would you invest it if you did not need it for, say, 5 to 10 years? I'm curious. With everything that's going on right now, I think that there are a couple of things that are going to be really important for society and the survival of society. One of them is energy. If I had £1,000 just to like throw away, didn't need it, 5, 10 years, I would be researching energy companies and putting money into energy companies, specifically looking at any company that might have a lead into a new energy source or minerals, elements needed for either a new or an existing energy source that is a new source, right? So, for example, in Canada, they've just found a new uranium site, basically, and apparently it's got the highest grade uranium out of that site. So I'd be looking at that if I had £1,000 just to throw in, didn't need it. I'd be looking at that energy, especially what's going on at the moment with energy prices and stuff like that globally, and what's happening on the geopolitical side of things as well. Cheers, Gordon. It's really interesting. I mean, I talk about this on the podcast tomorrow. Go watch the video tomorrow, because I pull a lot of resources, and the podcast is a little different this week because I pulled a lot of resources. And believe me, there is going to be a seismic change. Like the world as it's operated in the past 30, 40, 50 years, it's not going to operate like this anymore. And I fear for America. I fear for Europe, the Western world. I really do. I mean, yeah, you'll have to watch the video tomorrow. It's very interesting. It's really interesting what's going on right now. And, you know, part of me is finally actually a little bit happy. Like, a lot of the nations in Africa are kind of waking up. And when you think about the lasting legacy of colonialism in Africa, it is not a positive thing. And for the longest time, you know, they've had IMF plants in governments, and their objective has been to extract resources as quickly as possible, destroy the habitat where they are, if they can. And all of that is done in a bid to keep the countries who own these resources dependent on the West. I mean, how messed up is it that France for Burkina Faso, right, extracts 200 million from that country every year, 200 million, and then gives them 100 million back in aid. And because of everything that's happening right now, they're saying, well, we're not going to give you any aid anymore. And it's like, well, that's our money that you're taking. And they've basically said, look, no, we're not sending you anything anymore. We need a more equitable relationship. And how do these countries react? They're threatened, they're worried, especially against the landscape in which we find ourselves, where Russia's making moves, China is making moves, and that's worrying. It's very interesting what's going on right now. The fact that Oh, mate, listen, you got to listen to the podcast tomorrow morning to really get the full lowdown on it. But there's some very very interesting stuff happening geopolitically, and it's going to change the landscape of everything. And I'm just waiting to see what America's going to do. They can't take their normal route. They can't just go to war. They can't do that anymore. And they've missed the ball big time. Big time. And this has all happened gradually over the course of a decade or two. And they've just got to this point where now the shift that is going to happen, you can't stop it. You just can't. You can't stop the shift that is going to happen. And in the podcast tomorrow, I ask, what does that mean for the future of investing? I fully expect, I fully expect the BlackRocks, the Goldman Sachs of this world to pivot, to reclassify investments, reclassify where they put money, definitions on investment sectors, countries as investable places. And that shift is going to happen, and it's going to be a shift that is not going to benefit the States, the Europe, or Western economies. It just isn't. Unfortunately, it's going to be a very, very interesting, like, next 10 years. It really, really is. And when you start looking at global GDP, mate, huge seismic shift. Huge. So Kevin's saying, I'll be investing in Scottish Power because they really are diversified business, especially where they're Spanish business. Yeah, I would agree with that. Adam's just saying here, talking of geopolitical changes, there's a very interesting video from Ray Dalio with principles of dealing with the changing world order. You know, I did a video a few months ago. It was called, what was it? It was called, I talk about the petrodollar and the threat to the US dollar and BRICS. And a lot of people did not agree with me in the comments, which is completely fine. But I'm like, mate, you're not smelling the coffee. You are not smelling the coffee in any way, shape, or form. It's was it this video? It was this video right here. One second. It was this video right here. The end of the US dollar and US supremacy. Go watch that video, because we talk about the petrodollar there, how it all came about. And the conversation on the podcast tomorrow is kind of an extension of this. What BRICS are doing is, mate, and the fact, I'll do another live on this entirely, because when you think about the fact that the list of countries that want to be part of that block is huge. Now, individually as countries, you might think, doesn't matter. But I cover this in the podcast tomorrow. You go and have a look at the forecast, the economic forecast, the GDP annual growth rates for China and India. Just those two. And you compare it to Germany, England, America, the G7. Go compare it and tell me where things are going. Because this isn't just a momentary thing. This is something that has been building up to for a very, very long time. The fact that the BRICS GDP globally this year overtook the combined GDP contribution to the global GDP of the G7 and the European bloc this year tells you something. And if Saudi Arabia joins that bloc, they then go and create a currency, and then they go and create a payment system that means they're not relying on the dollar. Oh my God. It's mate, we don't know what's going to happen just yet, because this is all very much a work in progress. But like I said, there will be a lot of very, very panicked people in the US government right now, and they've not helped themselves at all. Not one little bit. Like I've said, Russia and China are making moves, and people will be scared to say, why would the world want to be led by communist regimes? At this point, I don't think there is any stopping this momentum. And It's just going to have to be a transition that everyone's going to have to get used to. Someone just saying here, regarding geopolitical energy issues, it's baffling why the Western government doesn't invest more in solar and don't blame Africa for being prudent. Mate, listen, 100%. Like, look, you have raped and pillaged Africa for so long. They're now waking up. Here's the crazy thing. Here's the crazy thing. We've got the new Green Deal and all this kind of stuff, right? If you think about it logically, what they're talking about is there is a line, there is a power energy supply line which is based in Morocco, where it's just solar panels, and the energy is then being shipped into Europe. When you think about who provides the components, building of the solar panels, who do you think it is? China. And when you think about it logically, what do we need? We need energy independence, because we need to wean ourselves off Russia, is the narrative, right? So what's the easiest thing to do? The easiest thing to do in terms of sustainable energy, and I'm not talking about whether it's right or wrong, the easiest source that you have would be nuclear energy, right? But the green energy, Greenpeace deal, that's not very conducive to that, right? And the reality is that if you think about Africa, all of the resources, most of the resources in the world are there. They've been raped and pillaged for decades and decades upon decades. I mean, France gets 500 billion from, I can't remember whether it's Mali or one of the countries, one of its old colonies, 500 billion a year. And that's been happening for the past 50 years. And you go to any of those countries, poor, they're waking up now. We have no resources. We have nothing. And even if we did, things like the Greenpeace deal and all of this environmental stuff makes it difficult for us to get it out of the ground. That is unsustainable. That is problematic to what needs to happen for us to be energy independent, and for so many other issues as well. And so Russia and China going into Africa and saying, you know what, you owe us 400 billion. We'll forgive it. We don't want anything from you. We'll invest into infrastructure with you. We're not going to mine it, take it, leave it to you. I mean, the chocolate industry is a prime example. Cacao. Those countries that produce cacao in Africa, a lot of them don't even know what it produces. I read a stat the other day, 6 billion. Now, you'll say that's a lot of money, and it is. 6 billion it takes to get the cacao from these countries. You can argue corruption, all that kind of stuff, but guess how much the chocolate manufacturers make? 100 billion plus. So these African countries are now saying, actually, you know what? You build the factories here. You export from here. We upskill our people. We provide jobs. We have infrastructure in place. No, don't want to do that. You want the old terms. And they're waking up and saying, we don't want the old terms anymore. And Russia and China, being in that space, are offering the new terms that a lot of them are craving for. And so it's going to be really, really interesting. But they're waking up. And look, what it means for Western society and Western governments is pretty scary. France is panicking right now. They are panicking right now, which is why there is so much talk about ECOWAS going in to Niger, and good on the rest of them, the neighbors, Burkina Faso, Mali, and a few other countries are saying, listen, if you invade, you're invading all of us, and it's going to be all out war. And I hope that it doesn't come to that, but that's what it looks like it might get to. All coerced, encouraged, and secretly influenced by France and America. I mean, it has to stop at some point. I mean, seriously, it has to. Yep. CFA, Frank, is a major reason why France is as strong as they are today. I would agree with that. I mean, the list of BRICS Plus is huge. And like the number of applications they've had this year alone, massive, huge. Peter, I want to say thank you. This is why I have the gong and you can't hear it. So I need to figure out how I get the gong through. But The gong is simply for this. Thank you, Peter, for the super chat. Really do appreciate it. Visual just saying, found your recent ISA video really insightful. I started contributing to a large amount of my salary towards my pension, but now I want to put it towards ISAs. Good, man. Just make sure, obviously, contribution levels, all that kind of stuff, make sure you're aware of that. Obviously, with a pension, you can't access till 55. If you need access to it in an ISA, it's perfect. I'm saying here, China is now experiencing deflation. Look, I'm not here to talk about the intricate elements of the Chinese economy. I mean, they may very well be, but on the world stage at the moment, their forecast for their GDP is huge. Them in India is absolutely huge, better than the Western world. And I talk about the fact that, you know, people will argue that these are not developed markets, so or efficient markets, right? So you can't really, to a certain extent, verify or make sure that the information coming out is 100% right. But it isn't a mistake that the Chinese economy has grown so much over the past 2 decades to the point where now they are in direct competition with the United States. And it's fundamentally because of the way their economy is set up. It really, really is. They are an economy that makes things, and the world unfortunately relies on that skill set. And where it basically goes from here is going to be really, really interesting. I think, obviously, the states, in terms of, and this is one of the reasons why the currency is so important. You know, the states generally will use the dollar to levy sanctions. I mean, if they get to the point where they're able to have their own currency and they're able to have their own payment system, it's going to render the dollar pretty much inconsequential. What sanctions? We don't trade in dollar anymore. What are you going to do? They'll be free to do business as they wish. Them and everyone in that block. And from a political point of view, it's not that great. It's not that great for the likes of the states or so. And I mean, if you listen to people like who's the Florida government in the states, he's already saying in 5 years' time, we're not going to be able to sanction countries using the dollar anymore because that's the direction of travel. They know it. And the question is, should America continue to have that level of influence over the world? Some people will say yes, some people will say no. I think there are merits for them having influence. There are merits where they should not have influence because they are the ones that they break their own rules. You know, talk about, you know, in the UN, everyone's supposed to have a sustainable global plan. Out of all of the countries globally in the UN, there are 5 countries that have a sustainable global plan that they've shared with their peers, other countries. The 5, one of them Sudan, been in conflicts and war. Yemen, been in war. Who was the other one? Myanmar, been in conflict and war. There's one other, and the 5th one is the United States. Why? It's going to be really, really interesting. And yeah, let's park it there because this channel isn't about politics, but at the same time, you can't get away from the fact that politics does influence the markets, finances, the choices that we make as individuals. But to get away from each of those and the connection of those things, it's just really, really hard to do. I'm just reading through the comments right here. Yeah, I was watching a video this morning, and they were talking about they built buildings. Well, I don't know whether they were experimenting with the construction material, but it's just like putty. It's just like, what are you doing? I mean, their real estate sector has taken a bit of a hit, but then again, you know, there's more to the economy than just the real estate sector in China and in any economy for that matter. You know, how it's going to work is going to be very, very different. Someone's just saying here, Africa is resource rich. The West has taken the piss. And you know what? There's only so many times you can kind of like rob and give them a little bit of change back. And they'd be like, oh, yeah, it's going to be all right, mate. And then continue to do it before they're like, actually, no, we've had enough. We're not doing this anymore. And that's where they're at the moment. They're at that point. Long to saying, my friend has recently said to me that if I need a loan, I should get a bigger loan with a low interest rate and then pay back what I don't what I don't need instantly, avoiding a higher APR. Isn't this fraudulent? Um, you, I don't know. That just wouldn't work. I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you take out a loan, right? So let's just say you needed 2 grand. You took out a loan for 10 grand. You get a lower APR, right? And then you say, I'm going to pay back 8 grand immediately. Like the bank's not going to allow you to do that. And even if they did, you're going to have a penalty on the interest. So to a certain extent, it is a little bit. It's not fraudulent. You're breaking the term of the loan, but the bank will know very quickly whether that's what you're trying to do. So it won't work because you're likely going to have a penalty to pay if you say I'm going to pay back 8 grand all of a sudden, or within 6 months you're going to overpay and pay it. You're going to pay a penalty. Most of the banks will levy a penalty on that. So for a dozen, let me bring it back up. I could top up my dozen. What would you look to do with that kind of money in the meantime? I can top up. What was there a comment before that, mate? 1 second. I don't know what you mean here, mate. You can top up your ISA for a dozen or so years. What would you do with that kind of money in the meantime? You mean the money that you put into your ISAs? What if you didn't contribute? Can you make that a little bit clearer for me, please, bud? I was saying it's not only energy issues in the UK or Western countries. They have serious issues, food supplies, and growing crops. Whatever you eat every day comes from overseas, and we can't we can't even we can't even population we can't even feed the population. I think you're saying there. I mean, look, there are much bigger issues as well beyond any of that. I mean, just for you to just think about the fact that Germany is now in recession, right? And Germany, if you look at the longer term view of Germany, they have an aging population without a lot of younger people coming through. And I think the number that I saw maybe a week or two ago was the fact that as people, there'll be more and more people retiring in the next 5 to 10 years. And they're going to get to a point where they're going to have potentially more people in retirement than young people actually working. That is a disaster in terms of economic output, productivity, sustainability of pensions, like just the general job market. It's a freaking disaster. And why have that much of an issue in, well, we do have an issue in the UK, but it's not as acute as that, right? Here's the thing. People aren't having children as much. So kids aren't being born at the same rate that they were in the 1970s to keep that equilibrium, right? And when you start to think about it, what is the one big thing that has been very, very successful over the past 5 years, 6, 7 years in the UK and across Europe? Nationalism, controlling our borders. We don't want immigrants and all that kind of stuff. All of that feeds into this. And the general consensus is this. If you look at the big investment houses, and go and Google a guy called Jim O'Neill. He used to be at Goldman Sachs. He actually coined the phrase BRICS, right? And it wasn't necessarily classified as those countries, but what he was looking for was, if we go back, and he did this over 10 years ago, if we look into the future and we look at, right, economies, the country to be the future giants, right? Guess what? It isn't Europe. It is not Europe. It's Brazil. It's Russia. It's India. It's China. It's all of those countries. Turkey was in there. There were a few others. He listed them at 11 or so countries altogether. Those countries were the ones where they were looking at booming. It is by no mistake that countries like Dubai, the UAE, saying we're future society. That's not by mistake. They're talking to the Goldman Sachs. They're talking to the BlackRocks of this world, because fundamentally, what do those guys care about? They care about making money. And currently, given the population density, given the makeup of the population, it's not Europe. With Germany being that example, it's not Germany, it's not Europe. It all of that. I'm freezing on. And so is run. But okay, there we go. We are still on here. So let me just nail that back on. I don't know what happened there. I just got disconnected from the streaming software. So hopefully you guys were able to still hear me in some way, shape, or form. I've got issues here. I don't know what's going on. I might need a new laptop. It's been playing up over the past couple of days, just being laggy and stuff. And I don't necessarily know why that is. I have no idea why it's doing this right now, to be honest. So I need to have a look at this. I do need to have a look at what's going on with the stream, and it might be my internet connection. I'm not too sure. But yes, guys, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching. And thank you to Kashi for this as well. Thank you very, very much. Again, I need to get the gong working. I need to get the gong working properly, because I will give a gong for this super sticker. It's really, really appreciated. If you have found value in this, please make sure you smash the like button. It will just mean that other people get the benefit of this live stream as well. But again, tune into the podcast tomorrow morning. It's going to be available on Apple, Google, all of the good podcast outlets from 6 a.m. It'll be available on the channel here at 12 p.m. But we go through a lot of detail around what's going on right now. It's very, very interesting. It's really, really fascinating. But who knows what's going to happen in the future. But I do think it's really important for us to kind of be abreast and aware of these potential changes coming down the road, because they are going to be very, very significant changes coming down the road potentially. And the more prepared we are, the better it's going to be. But I appreciate you guys. This stream is literally about a minute or so off the live time that I'm seeing here on my deck. But thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for the engagement. Visual, thank you as well for that. Really do appreciate it. I do need to clean my Mac. I did clean my Mac. That's the whole thing, though. I cleaned my Mac like 4 days ago, and ever since then, it's just been doing all sorts of stuff. I have no idea what's going on. But yeah, I need to have a look into this. Thank you, guys. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I will speak to you on Tuesday for our next live. Cheers.
Yeah. Surprise, a little different than you used to. Yeah. Dropping these bars on YouTube, knowledge I introduce you. Yeah. We chasing this money like it's the prize, it's the voodoo. Fugazi, it's just a lie we buying into. We need some cars on deck. Get the rollies, get the Moe, all the Mars on deck. We got the traders, got the picture with the Bentley in Dubai. Are you dripping in designer, looking fly? On the bombardier, sipping on the wine. Broke man, we broke. Where's the fun in being broke? Stocks and bonds get you yo. That's what I'm teaching these folks. I see that smoke, see them choke. Getting coked while I'm researching these stocks. Buying coke. 20 months on the channel, million people taking note. I got a warrant for Buffet. I'm coming for his vote.